Good morning, everybody. I am Luz Casanna, Head of Operations at Mental Health Europe, and I'm really delighted to welcome you all to this webinar, where we will be discussing co-creation and how to get co-creation right in mental health research. This webinar is the result of a collaboration between 7 European Union projects that were founded under the call Boosting Mental Health in Times of Change. You will have seen the names of the projects in the introduction slide, but I would like to mention them again. They are called Advance, Smile, Meant Best, Reconnected, IMPROVA, Bootstrap, and ASP Belong, and they're all powered by the European Health and Digital Executive Agency, HEDEA. Today's objectives are very simple. We have two main purposes today. We want to promote co-creation in mental health research while addressing the challenges that are faced in this area. But we also want to look into ways on how to improve co-creation in big research projects. So how we will be spending this 1 hour and a half together? We will have a short introduction. We will have some lightning talks with panelists representing these 7 projects. We will have a moderated discussions with some provocative questions. And then we will have some time for questions and answers. And of course, a closing. We are really looking forward into having a very interactive webinar, so there won't be presentations. There will be really exchange. And so I really invite you all to contribute, and there are different ways you can do it. You can use the chat. You can use the Q&A function of Zoom, but we will also be sharing a Slido link shortly, where you can also share your thoughts about the same questions that we will be addressed to the panelists. So I really look forward to this exchange. And to kick off, I would like to invite Ms. Miriam Borsnik-Gergely, who is Deputy Head of the Health Research Unit at HEDEA, to share with us a welcome message. Miriam, please.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. I'm very happy to greet you with some opening remarks in this first, but I believe not the last, of joint webinars between what you have already mentioned, 7 EU-funded sister projects coming from the same Horizon Europe call. Such collaboration and exchange of ideas among yourselves is exactly the outcome we were hoping for when in HEDEA, the European Commission's implementing agency that is managing health research, we organized an online networking event, an event that we are organizing for our project. I would like to acknowledge the joint effort of the 7 projects that you have mentioned, and I will repeat the names: Advance, ASP Belong, Bootstrap, IMPROVA, Meant Best, Reconnected, and Smile, for organizing today's gathering. Mental health is one of the most pressing challenges of Europe, especially since the COVID pandemics, and in particular for youth. I have myself 2 teenagers, and I have personally witnessed them and their friends going through mental health difficulties that were not so pronounced or not so commonly heard of before 2020. It is estimated that in Europe, 84 million citizens, ranging from all ages and of all socioeconomic background, of all origins, are suffering various mental health issues in their everyday lives. The staggering figures show that, for instance, the second leading cause of death of young people between 15 and 19 is suicide, coming just after the road accidents. The sheer size of this challenge is now clearly recognized in the EU policies, and in particular in the Commission's communication of June 2023 on a comprehensive approach to mental health, but also in a novel policy approach on the power of the arts and culture for people's well-being and inclusion. It is also reflected in the increased EU budget granted for its research and innovation. And the European Commission is looking closely at the results of the ongoing research projects in this domain, including yours, especially now as we are preparing for the next research framework program. And while I personally will have to leave, there are other colleagues here from the agency and the Commission among the participants who will follow with attention your discussions and also perhaps contribute. So I wish you a very fruitful and creative morning, and I'm looking forward to hearing about today's conclusions and on co-creation, and of course, the continuation of such gatherings. Thank you.
Many thanks for your message, Miriam, and thank you for being with us today. I would like now to invite the panelists to turn on their cameras. And at the same time, I would like to invite all of the participants to join the conversation either by scanning the QR code that you should be seeing on the screen, or in the chat you will find a link to join the Slido discussion. So don't hesitate to connect. So welcome to all of our panelists today, and we'll start immediately with a first question for you all. And please, when you reply, say your name and the project that you are representing. So the first question I would like to share with you is, along the co-creation pathway, how can we really actively prevent tokenism and ensure that individuals with lived experience of mental health problems are not simply a diversity checkbox, but are really equal partners in discussing and developing solutions? Who would like to start? Or shall I invite one of you based on the screen? Arlinda, would you like to go first?
Hello, such a pleasure being part of this panel. I represent a few projects, working on MENDBEST, as well as Reconnected and Prosperate, based at St. Mary's University in the UK. It is such a great question that I think it was important for everyone to consider it from the beginning of planning research proposal. I think the key word is that involvement in the planning, but also thinking throughout the stages of its development is transformative rather than just merely informative. The co-creation is conducted with participants, not on participants. So the insights that will emerge from co-creation processes are product of a working collaboration. I want to give a very brief analogy that I find it fascinating, and that's what we've tried to kind of implement in our projects. There was just a few years back in Moscow, there were new buildings, and it's an architecture analogy. They were building a new compounds with buildings, but also a large park. And once they finalized, the park was all green. There were no pathways, just the grass and the flowers. And the sponsor said, no, this is not finished. You know, where are the pathways? And the architect said, listen, you will have the pathways in 3 months' time. So what they did, they waited for all the residents to walk and create those pathways. And where those pathways were in the grass, that's where the roads then were set on. And that's like, I think, a great representation of co-creation. So I'll just be very brief. I think it's really important that it is informative. It's not informative, but really transformation.
Thank you, Arlinda, for also helping us visualize co-creation in such a practical way with your metaphor. Claudia, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you so much. Good day to all. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Claudia de Freitas. I'm Associate Researcher at the Institute of Public Health of University of Porto and co-lead of co-creation at Project Advance. So moving on to the question asked, I must start by sharing that in my view, research co-creation is first and foremost a relational process through which we set ourselves to attain the goal of co-constructing knowledge and deliver innovation together with all parties that knowledge will likely impact. So to advance knowledge development, we need stakeholders to have a common understanding of what co-creation means, what roles are expected from them, which resources are available, but also we do need to anticipate on the challenges to implementation because they will arise. And these challenges, they can amount to anything from stakeholders having incompatible agendas to them having unequal bargaining skills, to not sharing a common language, to hosting conflicts of interest. And this can be further complicated by research teams often having very pressing schedules and output production pressures. So enabling meaningful collaboration and avoiding tokenistic involvement, particularly, but not solely, by people with lived experience of mental health issues will depend a great deal on our ability to handle these challenges and conflicts and to manage them. And I don't think, and I think my fellow panelists agree, that there is no simple recipe to do this other than really continuously monitoring and self-reflecting and creating safe spaces in which we do feel free to express our doubts, our concerns, to share what we think could be potential solutions to the rising problems, and to work together through these tensions that may emerge. And one thing that we have been finding helpful is to resort to principles of equity and solidarity when we have to make these decisions. And in practice, what this means is that we try to allocate resources which we are short for, first to those stakeholders who may need them most, and we try to lower the threshold of participation by prioritizing the needs of those stakeholders who may be at greater disadvantage. And this may be holding meetings in person instead of online, which would be comfortable for many stakeholders, but not for all, holding them in the language that most participants are comfortable speaking. However, one caveat that I have to make is that on drawing on this approach, we don't always pre-assume that the people with lived experience of mental health issues are by definition the least well-equipped to engage in co-creation. It may so happen that practitioners, researchers even, who are less familiar with co-creation also require support in making sense and in accommodating different forms of knowledge. So to prevent tokenism, we really have to encourage, resource and support all stakeholders without exception, so that they can indeed be equal partners and collaborate for equal benefit. Thank you.
Many thanks, Claudia, for already bringing up some very practical solutions on how to address this issue. Celia, happy to hear from you.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm Célia Salles. I'm also in Porto. I'm an associate professor at the Faculty of Psychology and Education Sciences. And I'm representing here the project Bootstrap that addresses the risks of the digitalization for mental health, especially in adolescents. In the Bootstrap project, I'm leading the work package on citizen involvement and co-creation. So I would say that the greater challenge is that when we do involve citizens that are not professional researchers into a research project, is to create the team. we need to put both citizens and researchers on the same page, which is something that must be built eventually during the project itself. Because in fact, what happened is that we are not used in research, in our academia, and in our projects, we are not used to work with a citizen science approach. So usually in projects, we have researchers with large experiences of working in a different way without citizen involvement. And so somehow they must recognize that there are benefits on starting to work in a different way. On the other hand, we also have citizens, adolescents, patients, users that are not professional researchers. So they don't know the languages, they don't know the rules, the methods. And so they might, for instance, might not understand why some of their proposals are not accepted or why things are done in a certain way. So I would say that creating a team where everybody's on the same page and is collaborating and open to listen to each other's view is a key point. And I would point, well, some of the proposals and recommendations that were said earlier also apply. I would add two more. And one of the things is that it is important to surprise researchers. That is, creating in the project activities, tasks where researchers have contact with citizens with their inputs, and they realize that they are doing a better research project because of the presence of this interaction, of these inputs of citizens. So if citizens are, if we create an opportunity where citizens teach something to researchers, there will be more openness to work in a team. On the other hand, the second experience that we would like to share is the importance of honesty, to be honest with citizens regarding what we are doing with the inputs and the knowledge and the effort they put in the project. It is important in these big projects that they are long for a long time. It is important to have an ongoing feedback and self-evaluation of citizen involvement, namely what has been co-created, what has been proposed by citizens, how it has been included and not included in the project, and why. And this must be done through a dialogue between the research and the citizens, and should be clear. So if people understand their roles and they feel that everybody has got ideas, some of it cannot be implemented, but all ideas are respected and listened to and considered, that helps much to really have a team with core researchers where everybody contributes in a equally to the project aims. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Celia. I've been hearing so far so many keywords for co-creation. We'll get back to some of them. I'd like to invite Mel from the SMILE project.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Mel McKendrick and I'm an Associate Professor of Psychology at Heriot-Watt University in Scotland. In the SMILE project, which is about developing digital solutions, including gamification to boost resilience and reduce psychological distress in young people aged 10 to 14. I'm involved in leading work packages around ethics and security, and also running a pilot, one of 7 pilots across a number of countries, and leading on the game design and case studies. So we are actively trying to prevent tokenism by involving young people and other stakeholders actively within game design. We're involving them at different stages, right from trying to understand the issues that are important to them. What are the real world issues that young people are actually having to deal with that might cause them distress? And we take these perspectives from the young people themselves and from their support structures, so parents, teachers, clinicians, who may also have an understanding of where they're at and what they need. We don't make assumptions, and I think this is something that's important in mental health. Not everybody has a diagnosis, and mental health fluctuates from time to time, so we don't go in making assumptions. We are recruiting generally, we're involving people generally in projects so that we understand the issues that are affecting them and how they affect them at different stages of their development, really, and day-to-day. And we're looking at implementing, so we're taking at different stages where we're actually having, within each of the iterative designs of the game, they're involved in workshops where they're able to input and prioritize what's important to them. So we have partners making priority maps about the issues and the features of the game, including the design, the biomarkers, the AI implications, the ethics implications. So the young people have a real voice in all of this. And I think that this wide recruitment is really important in diversity and ensuring diversity, rather than trying to target groups that you predefine in a sense. Allowing that diversity to naturally emerge is really important, and also to involve them in the dissemination stage, so they're able to see their voices reflected in the outputs of the project as well, really. So that's a bit of a summary, hopefully.
Thank you very much, Mel. Kate, let's hear from you.
Yeah, so I'm a scientific coordinator of ASP Belong. I'm a reader in the School of Psychology at the University of Birmingham in the UK. I completely agree with what everyone has said. I think one of the key things, so someone already said this about the importance of designing co-creation from the beginning of the project. And I think for us that's key, because it's about how it's interweaved with all aspects of our design. And I think that's one reason why I'm here today, because we couldn't parcel out like one person to represent co-design, because it's just so integral to everything we're doing. But I'd like to just give 3 examples, if I may, about that sort of illustrate some of the work we've been doing so far. So our project is about developing new psychotherapeutic experiences for young people to strengthen their sense of belonging, and through that boost their mental health. And the experiences are led by a smartphone, so there's a tech aspect, and the thing that the tech brings is basically magic to the experiences, because they're group-based collaborative experiences, and they involve fictional story to allow us to bring in lots of potentially sensitive issues that would be difficult without that sort of fictional context. So we couldn't do it without collaborating with young people, because how can we know, for example, what is magical to a young person without asking them? So I think the way we approached it in the design of the project was to think, okay, obviously we don't want to be tokenistic, and more importantly, we want to capacitate young people so that the contribution that they're bringing is something that is really as valuable as possible for them and for us. And I think we felt that the way we do that is by thinking about from the start, how is each sort of instance of collaboration something that the young people benefit from. So we've got a group of, we call them adolescent co-researchers, and they are young people, 2 young people from each of our different countries, and they've been involved since the start of the project. And we meet with them every 2 weeks, and it's a remote meeting because they're all from different countries. And we designed that process with a view to thinking, okay, these young people are going to be part of all aspects of the project and really oversee like everything that we're doing. And so what we're bringing to them is training in all sorts of scientific methods, all sorts of creative methods, and also we're bringing that experience of collaborating with other young people across different countries, and considering different languages. So that's sort of one way that we've designed the experience that they have to be valuable for them, and they're going to remain with us throughout the project. So it's really training these young people to be sort of the most valuable possible scientific contributors to the project. And then we've got another group of young people who were recruited by the Unicorn Theatre, which is a partner of ours in the UK, and it's the biggest children's theatre in the UK. And we call this group our creative associates, and they're working with us right now on a weekly basis, specifically around the co-creation of a particular experience that we're developing. And I guess the key here is that we wanted to inform young people, like truly inform them what it would be like before they sort of signed up. So the theatre ran sessions in schools local to the area that were sort of similar in some way to the kinds of creative sessions that they would be going on to participate in. And so that gave them a taste of what it would be like. And then young people were invited to apply. We had great interest, and then a group of young people selected, and we're meeting with that group of young people every week, basically between January and August this year. And it's just about building that relationship and giving, so that the young people know exactly which elements of the experience they're feeding into and when. So for example, obviously the tech magic, then there's things around that, there's things around story, there's things around character. But it's all within the sort of creative sphere, so that the young people feel really comfortable and really enjoy what they're doing as well. And then the third example, which is different in another way, and that's why I wanted to give it, is that we are also running cultural exchanges with groups of young people from 3 of our countries, where we're going to be evaluating the sort of first intervention that we're developing. And so these cultural exchanges give the young people the opportunity to travel to a different country and then work with people from the 3 different countries. So apart from the perspective of sort of what we need in terms of the research, that there's things around making sure that our experience is sensitive to all the different cultures, and that's I guess what we need as an outcome. But then what the young people need as an outcome that we've designed for them to achieve is this real deeper understanding of different cultures, and how to like an experience of interacting across cultures. Some of them, it's the first time they will have gone and done something in a different country that's not holiday. I mean, I think most of them probably. So it's that cultural exchange that gives young people that broad, more broad sort of perspective on the world, I guess. So those are the 3 examples that I wanted to give.
Thank you, Kate, for bringing further very practical examples on how to address the issue of tokenism. I'm going to give the floor to Rodrigo. I'll have to ask the 2 last panelists to really stick to the 3 minutes because we're running a little bit over time according to planning. Thank you very much, Rodrigo.
Hello, my name is Rodrigo Lima. I'm the scientific coordinator of IMPROVA. I am affiliated here in Fundación Solideo in Spain. IMPROVA, we are developing an e-health platform to implement a universal promotion of mental health and well-being in adolescents. And because of that, we are including not only adolescents as our first-person group in the co-creation procedures, but also teachers, parents, and other policymakers, because we hope that by the end of the project, our tool, our platform will be integrated into the educational system. So we need to have the perspective of different stakeholders into the project. And to prevent tokeism during co-creation procedures, we need to, some of our colleagues already highlighted that, to include these already in the concept of the project and in the design of the program and of the project, and try to partnership with them as early as possible. Very often this is extremely challenging because different stakeholders, they have different interests and urgencies that the scientific timing from project grant to project implementation and all of the phases of the project, very often this is very difficult. We actually try to engage with them as early as possible, so have dedicated time and resources to the co-creation procedures. That's the utmost importance. We included various different strategies because of the different phases of the project. Another thing that was highlighted here, and I would like to stress, is the importance of having them throughout the duration of the project. And one of the things I would like to highlight is that we could create a commission, as some of the examples already anticipated here by the colleagues, of having groups of stakeholders participating in the project and supporting the development of the program in the different stages, from very early in the beginning of the project until the end of the project. So just to keep very short, because we are running out of time, we can discuss further other aspects of co-creation.
Indeed, Rodrigo, we will have some more time after this first part. Thank you. And Catherine.
Thank you, Leoska. Thank you for organizing this meeting. My name is Dr. Catherine Schopp from Germany. I'm a postdoctoral researcher and a licensed psychotherapist and the coordinator of the co-creation process of the Reconnected project. And a lot of good points have already been named. I would like to add 2 more points, which come at the very beginning of the co-creation process, I think, as we are also at the very beginning of this process. So first is about attitude, I think. It's about our attitude as researchers. I think as researchers, we need to be more humble. We should be more humble. So we should not think that we are the only ones who know what a good intervention looks like. We might be experts in terms of science and scientific designs and conducting scientific research, but an intervention is only good if it fits the needs and the life of the users. So by definition, we need feedback from our users in order to make good interventions that will be used. Yeah, so I think we need to acknowledge that we are not experts in everything. And the second point relates to that. In order for our co-creators to become users, the point is about knowledge and knowledge transfer. So in psychotherapy, for example, we want our clients to become their own experts, to become experts for their own problems and be able to manage their own problems. So we want to transfer our knowledge to our clients in order for them to become true experts. And I think that's important in co-creation too. As researchers, we should share our knowledge to our co-creators, so they will eventually become their own experts, and so they can make well-informed decisions and design and choose the best possible and suitable interventions in order to make research better. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, and thanks to all of you. I think you've already provided so much input that I have plenty of questions, and I need to retain myself a little bit, but I will focus on a couple of them, and then we'll see. So, I've heard from you that co-creation really requires flexibility, adaptation, really monitoring the process and taking care of it throughout the process. But we know that in research and even in new projects, there are frameworks, there are, deadlines, there are parameters to respect, there is the rigor of scientific methodology in research. So how can we really address these tensions? How have you done it in your projects, and do you have any ideas about it? This is an open question to our panelists, so please take the floor. Anyone who would like to share? Otherwise, I will.
Shall I start?
Please.
Great. So yes, absolutely. There is that tension, or I think the presumed tension regarding the quite rigid structure of the scientific methods, where we're trying to be very, very objective, collect objective data, but also I think it's quite important that we all understand, as especially as social scientists, that the data is socially construed as well. So I think all these tensions, the scientific methodology and the rigors, with the aims of minimizing bias and so on. But at the same time, we're working with co-creators, which may be a limited group of people that will be providing us with guidance and support. That's where you think scientifically, how biased is this? How biased are these responses and this guidance that I'm receiving? Nevertheless, I think we all work in a mixed methods approaches, combining quantitative with qualitative work. But I think the importance, and someone has already mentioned it, is working together and upskilling our co-creators in terms of scientific knowledge, scientific methodology. So we have for ManBest, we have created, apart from the webinars, the workshops, and so on, we have created a platform for working and created a community of practice, so to speak, which we see in practitioners, but not in co-creators. I think it's quite new, where we have this community of practice for our co-creators to get together and not just discuss specific steps in the design of the studies, but also to build up their skills. So we have created little information about MOOCs, massive open online courses. We provide some short videos, let's say, about what's an RCT, why are we taking specific steps in the studies, to also empower them to give competent support to the study, but also for their future is quite useful, because it's great for the CVs, and also to be great advocates in the future for themselves, and especially the vulnerable groups that they represent. So that's just a brief, maybe reflection on how we are trying to have this power dynamics and expertise equitable in this relationship.
Thank you, Arlene. That would be interesting to know if some of these tools you mentioned are available for everybody, and maybe if they are,
they are just for our co-creators.
Okay, they're just for your co-creators.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyone else who would like to share about this? Rodrigo.
Yes. So the scientific rigor and co-creation, not very often they match so well together. We learned that throughout our project. We had a very structured approach for the co-creation procedures in the beginning of the study, to approach schools, invite all of the stakeholders in the school system to co-create with us in the 4 countries that we are testing our platform. But we learned very quickly that this very sometimes squared and with high scientific rigor and methodology was not necessarily the most appropriate to get as much feedback in the beginning of the project as we needed. So we had to be very flexible and change the approach to be able to get as much information as possible. So one thing that I would like to to highlight here for our colleagues who are watching us is we need to be careful to not be excessively scientific with scientific rigor and squareness, and be as flexible as possible, because very often in the co-creation procedures, what we want is as much interaction with the users, with different types of stakeholders as possible, to have a nurture and a communication with them, to communicate with them. So those are points that I would like to highlight regarding this scientific rigor and co-creation approaches and procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. So maybe there is also a little message to the representatives of the funding programs here to also, in the future funding programs, enable the kind of flexibility that co-creation really requires to work effectively, because sometimes we have to respect those frameworks and it's then difficult. Anyone else? Mel? Oh, sorry, I don't know if Celia or Mel was first. Let's go with Mel and then Celia.
Mel was first, yes.
You're muted, Mel.
Yeah, I think it's important to be able to explain the scientific process to the stakeholders involved in different languages, you know, in the sense of, you know, making it really understandable for them across different age groups and different needs, so that it actually means something to them, so that it doesn't feel like a process that are excluded from it. It feels like something that they really understand, that they have a reason to feel that they care about getting involved in. I like the idea of this sense of community where they can become part of something along that journey. So there's a natural incentive there as well. And I think also we have to be careful sometimes the way that we create the co-creative opportunities for them, because it's about that flexibility, in a sense, that Rodrigo's mentioned, because people may, so if you've got a young person, for example, with social anxiety, sitting in a group, a focus group for them may not be the best way for them to provide feedback at all times. So maybe having more flexible opportunities to allow them to feedback in a continuous way across the project as well, and across different mediums could be useful.
Thanks, Mel. Celia.
Thank you. I would add, I share an experience that we had in Bootstrap. In our first year, we have been developing an app that is an assessment app that will be used in studies to find a way of identifying young people that are at risk of problematic users of the internet. In order to do that, we have prepared an assessment app with many psychological scales and very rigorous from a psychometric point of view. And we need that thousands of young people in schools use that app in the next 6 months, so that we can then make some studies and find the algorithm that is good for this diagnosis of risk. So we have this challenge that is young people in schools in September need to be engaged with the app and use it and answer all these long and boring questionnaires during 6 months, which is difficult. We are talking about young people from 12 to 16 years old. So we have this co-creation approach for technology, where we involved in multiple steps of the development of this assessment app, young people, so users, representatives of the final users that help us think how this assessment app should be so that users then use it. And so we have here 3 perspectives that might potentially cause tension. That is, we have the psychometric team that says, okay, we have this all these questionnaires that must be filled in a certain context. We have the IT technology team that has limits of time and budget for developing the app. And we have then users and young people that say, I asked one of them in one of our workshops, look, would you use this? Would you recommend this? And he said, no, no way, I can't. I would start and I would never use it again because it's boring, etc. So our project has been working with an interdisciplinary approach, and that is working. I think it's key. So what we have done is that besides online focus groups, very limited to have feedback on earlier versions of the app, we organized a face-to-face camp where all researchers involved and also young people were there, and they were working in small groups, interdisciplinary groups. And so young people could, and the developers and psychometric researchers could understand the point of view of each other, and they could provide suggestions to make it more engaging. And for instance, there was the idea of a storytelling that could help, or gamification that could help young people use it more. But it's, from a psychometric point of view, it's not possible that this app is a game, because it will change the way people use the app. So it will change the assessment process. So you see, we cannot include all the suggestions of young people, but we explain that to the young people. But researchers also understand that they really need to do something to make the app more usable. So and then there's a sort of negotiation, you see, where you understand the point of view of the other person because you have been there, you have been interacting with that person, you have been listening to the 3 perspectives, and then we all go to our countries because these projects are very big, but still we try to have into consideration the point of view of the others. So I think that this interdisciplinary approach, of course, based on the previous training, etc., but it is a very important component. At least it has been a good experience for us at Bootstrap.
Thank you for this input, Celia. Kate, and then I have another question for you all.
Yeah, I just wanted to give 2 quick examples. One on the tension between scientific rigor and co-creation, the other on the timelines issue. So I think one of the things that we want to collaborate with adolescent co-researchers on is the outcome measures that we're going to use as a part of our trial. So like a not double blind, but a blind randomized controlled trial. Clearly, there's limits with what we're able to do with outcomes within a trial. And obviously we're talking about some of this, Celia, but it feels to us that the key thing there is about just us being completely open with the young people and making sure that they have appropriate training to understand what we're saying, which obviously feeds in also to what Mel was saying. But for example, like if we're talking about a specific outcome measure that we agree with the young people is generally okay, then how much scope do we have to change that? We need to make sure that they understand there's limited scope to change it, but in principle, you know, we could alter wording if there's something that they don't understand, but they need to understand, you know, the principle of rigorous scientific measurement in order to sort of know, to understand us and contribute in that way. And then the other example that I wanted to give was about timelines. So I think this comes up a lot when we're doing co-creation of technological stuff with young people, because there's always this tension between, I guess, where the input is coming from. And I think it's important not to shy away from the fact that everyone involved in that process has different kinds of expertise, and it is being led by, in our case, it's being led by a design team who already have experience of having collaborated with young people to develop a prototype of our technological intervention. And if we ignored that process and sort of started from the beginning with this new group of young people that we're collaborating with, then we would have lost a lot of that experience, which in itself has been informed by young people. So again, it comes down to the openness, but also not shying away from the fact that we need to make sure that everyone understands the kinds of experience that they're bringing to the process, and being completely open about that, I think, helps us to get away from the sort of power dynamics. And I guess just the last thing on that is, with tech development, obviously we're very, very tied by timelines. So it's only by being completely clear about that from the start can we meet the timelines that are really important for the tech developers. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Kate. Your point on outcome links well with my next question. So I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I hear co-creation really requires time, effort, resources. It can be complex because you're bringing together so many different perspectives, and we hear is about relations, no? And changing a culture and mindset. This is also what I'm reading in Slido. So I want to ask you, panelists, but also all participants, is it worth it? What are the benefits? And how do you really measure the success of co-creation efforts in mental health research behind maybe scientific publications and results? What are really the indicators that tell us that we've been doing well co-creation in mental health research? Anyone?
I can come in.
Please.
So I think my first response is, why do it? Because everything is better. And I think then that inherently makes measurement difficult. But I think for me, then the measurement comes a lot down to impact. So if we put our if we take our impact plan that we designed in our application, and we think about that in a context where we hadn't done co-creation, actually the vast majority of that work would just not be possible, because we need the buy-in from all of our stakeholders at all stages in order to create the kind of impact that we want. So to me, the measurement of co-creation and the measurement of impact are sort of completely intertwined, and we should be thinking about how we're measuring impact. And I'm not going to go into that because then that's another question.
Thank you, Kate. Mel.
Yeah, I think the benefit of doing it, it's a completely necessary part of understanding the solution to the needs. The solution has to be built wrapped around the needs, and the only way to do that is through co-creation, really. But in terms of the how to measure it, I think there's three kind of prongs of measuring it. There's the output of the co-production process itself. So one, you know, the product, the end product, and how that's the impact of how the take-up of that, for example, and the measured benefit of people using it. There's the experience of participating in the process itself for the beneficiaries, so the end users, you know, if they're involved in that process, and that can be done through interview afterwards, focus groups, etc., to understand how they felt in that process. And the other thing I think is the effect on the participants in a longer term way. So how does being involved in that process actually maybe give them confidence, give them skills that they can then take on and use in their life in a different way?
Thank you. I think we had Arlinda first and then Rodrigo, and then we'll open the discussion with our participants.
Very briefly, totally agree. I think, having, especially in the work that we're doing, work and research without co-creators means that we are developing interventions that may not be acceptable, accessible, or usable at all, with no utility. Therefore, I think it is essential and imperative that we do it. It's not maybe, definitely. In terms of the evaluation, it's quite important that we think about assessing the satisfaction with engagement levels and stakeholders involved in the whole co-creation process, in the sense that we can improve in the future, and we know how to do things better. The quality of relationships and the partnerships is really important, you know, evaluating those formed through the co-creation initiatives, and having indicators such as trust, mutual respect, collaboration among stakeholders, among our co-creators and the research teams is really important. Things that can be quite having an impact are, you know, impact on policy and practice. And that's what we hope that our research does ultimately. It will have a transformative impact on policy and practice. And if it's done with co-creation, with co-creators, you know, we can assess what is the extent that those efforts will influence policy development, service delivery, clinical practice, and that with documents that can be kind of evaluated. It was mentioned already, the empowerment and capacity building. We mentioned that we're trying to upskill and build capacity in our co-creators, so measuring the degree to which that has made actually an impact. It can collect cultural and contextual relevance and assess it for the solutions that we have created, and definitely the ethical and social impact. What ethical considerations and social implications that the co-creation efforts have impacted.
Thank you, Arlinda. Rodrigo.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with the comments of Kate and Arlinda. Actually, Arlinda mentioned one point that for me it's pivotal here, which is acceptability and acceptance, because there is a distance between us as researchers, as well as our methods could be, but there is a distance between what we think is the best solution to actually the best solution. So we actually need the input from different stakeholders, in our case, adolescents, teachers, parents, while designing our solutions and all stages of the process. And regarding how to measure, how to assess the impact, apart from the options highlighted here, we can also have a log. The projects can actually develop a log on the actual changes of the program, how the co-creation procedures impacted the current of the project, and maybe the online platform of the European Commission for publications. Actually, it could have a session dedicated for different methodologies or different types of reports, because I think it's also important to report that externally, because co-creation procedures, it's something that it could be further developed, and other researchers could benefit from the lessons learned and the know-how that the projects are building. So actually communicating this to the public, not only scientific, but also to the general public, I think this is extremely important as well.
This sounds like a very good suggestion, Rodrigo, because there is a lot of learning happening in this project. So it really would be good to document it and share it widely. Very quickly, Celia, and then Claudia, and then we move to questions from our audience.
Thank you. Just a brief note, that is, I agree with, of course, with all the inputs and the views and that was said. What I think is that we need to put this knowledge and this experience inside the scientific community, because we are talking about citizen science. We are talking about involvement in science. So I would not put this question on what are the ways we have to show the impact of involving citizens in science besides publications. I would say we need to create publications and inform the scientific community in using one of the methods that are used, that is writing scientific papers. So we should inform about this way of working, their impacts, their difficulties, their limits, the best practices, the outputs, etc., and really create a rigorous scientific body around this new method that is. This is a methodology, right? So I would say that we are inside science, and citizen involvement should not be considered as something optional and a part that is not scientific or rigorous. Thank you.
Thank you, Celia and Claudia.
Well, I fully agree with all the insights shared. Just to emphasize that this measuring of success is really a work in progress. And in the scope of Advance, we are trying to do this together with our society advisory groups who are leading the co-creation, in fact, and they are composed of 10 to 12 people representing end users and practitioners, policymakers, and mental health organizations based in each of the 7 participating countries. And surely for us, the benefits of co-creation are measured in terms of whether the interventions that will be implemented really are bringing a better understanding into users' needs, if they are usable, if they are taken up, and whether their results are sustainable. But surely I think success must be measured in terms also of whether participants do feel empowered, both personally and at the professional level, and whether this co-creation does deliver what it's meant to do, which is to inspire cooperation and to nurture both existing and new relationships for collaboration. And surely the indicators of co-creation impact, I think, should be co-created as well. So we hope that within our project, we will be able to develop these with our society advisory groups. But I think a good sign of whether we are producing important impact is whether co-creators sustain their involvement throughout the project. These are long projects, so this is something that we really have to nurture, and which brings us back to the importance of relationships and the importance of keeping these nurtured and well. Thank you.
Many thanks, Claudia, and everybody in the panel. We're going to now look at questions coming from the audience. Thank you so much for being so active in Slido. We will be sharing a report of Slido, so you will be getting all the input and comments that have been contributed. So please be as active as well in the Q&A function of Zoom to ask a specific panelist, or in general, all of them, your question. I would like to start with, we have 2 questions in the chat that are a bit close. The engagement of the different stakeholders in co-creation, it needs to be sustained, it needs to be nurtured, but this can be challenging because research projects are quite long, and we've heard from you that it's important to build co-creation from the beginning throughout till the end. So what have been the challenges you've been facing in supporting this engagement, and what are the strategies that you have put in place and that you can share with us? And particularly when we think about certain groups, for instance, young people or people experiencing mental health problems, or other groups involved in co-creation that are maybe in vulnerable situations, how can we really support engagement of all stakeholders, but also specific groups? Arlinda?
Hi. Yes, I think it is it is really important, and I also wanted to address one of the questions on the Q&A regarding having a sustainable co-creators involvement without incentives. I would say when thinking about the equity, the co-creators are also part of our team. So it will be the same in the contribution and the incentives, and getting paid for your time. I think it's more than fair and more than equitable. So that there should be incentives, or at least to compensate for the time that people will give to you as a researcher. Absolutely. But in the same, I do understand that there may be challenges in terms of funding, and there may be limitations. So there's other incentives that you can think of apart from financial incentives. So for example, for us, we've agreed that we could provide some of funds for upskilling. So if people wanted to carry out specific research related online courses, we could pay for them and so on, but also deciding with the co-creators what is the incentive that they would like to receive in terms of, we're working with young people, as CV supports, and giving references, depending on what you're working with and whom you're working with, but definitely incentives and definitely pay for people for their time. And I think in terms of challenges that we've had, it's been quite specific because we're 11 countries, 11 cultures, 11 languages, working together. And we wanted to create this community of practice that I mentioned before. But at the same time, we're aware that to have that, we have to have a common language. So we decided that we're speaking English, and which means we are kind of excluding some very important, vulnerable co-creators. Therefore, we thought it was important then we create like a cascading approach, where we have a core member of our co-creators, which I see many of them have joined us today. Very, very happy to see them here with us. Have that specific group who speak English, but we also try to stratify for the vulnerable groups that we're working with. We're aware that we're working with, for example, with older adults, where digital divide, it's a big issue. Therefore, we have this core group of people, of co-creators, but we also have the local groups of co-creators, and they all work together with us in terms of supporting us. That's how we try to work on this challenge, but we still think that's something that's an ongoing.
Thank you, Arlinda. Rodrigo, on this question, and then maybe we look at another question.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. We tried during project proposal preparation to invite teachers and students associations to be part of the project, but although they were interested sometimes, they had difficulties. So, for instance, bureaucracy problems, because we write the proposal in 2021 and we start the project in 2024, and they have regulatory obligations. They cannot commit to something 3, 4, 5 years in advance from some of their regulatory problems. So we saw that was actually impossible to have them officially in the project to receive funds directly for the work they are spending. So we need to think about solutions to those problems, maybe together, collaboratively. This is from one point, and the solution we thought for this problem, because we have co-creation procedures in our project, of course, is to be specific. So be specific. Now in this moment in time, we identify the potential people who could support us in the co-creation procedures and be specific as possible on what we ask them. And for another group to have a more continuous participation in the project. So try to be specific, not necessarily all of the people engaged in the co-creation procedures will be in the project from beginning to end, but maybe in specific time points to be more productive and effective with their time, with the use of their time as well. And also because they have other interests to not necessarily engage in a project with a 3-4 year commitment. This might be difficult. And as Alinda said, ask them what would be ways to acknowledge their participation. For instance, a certificate of participation in research or being trained in specific content that is helpful for their profession, like in the teacher's case, or for parents or for students, certificate of participation that can be recognized in their practice.
Thank you, Rodrigo. I'm hearing that even challenges in co-creation, for challenges in co-creation, we can find solution by co-creating the solutions. I would like to tell the participants that if there is a burning question or comment, you can do it on camera. So you can actually speak up. If you want to do it, please put it in the chat, and the colleagues who are coordinating the chat will flag it up. Meanwhile, there is another question about how to take into consideration mental health of workers, researchers, because working place is not always a good place for people experiencing mental health issues, as their needs are not respected. This probably goes beyond the research aspects we're discussing today, but I guess the question would be, could we even co-create to address the issue of mental health in the workplace? I don't know if the panelists have, Mel, please.
Yeah, I think this is an important point, actually, in the sense that many times I think projects are evolving and we look to the co-create opportunities for participants, for the end users of the products, but we forget about the team that we're working with sometimes. So maybe the co-creation should start at the team level of identifying whether there are aspects within the team that are reflected in some of the work that's been done and how we actually address the needs of the team to support those members who are coming in and out of that wider team along the way, so that we're kind of implementing good practice right from the start, so that we can show then the other co-creation members how we're approaching the projects. And I think it's a good point to raise, and for teams to think about how they handle that going forward.
Thank you, Mel. Any further thoughts? No. Let's see if there are further questions. Maybe I have one, actually. You've all mentioned in different ways creating a safe space. You've mentioned openness, respect, transparency. So how can we create a safe space for co-creating in mental health research? Do you have any tips to share? Kate, please.
I think it's by considering really carefully who the people are that we're doing the co-creation with. So in our case, as I mentioned, like we've got several different groups. I just talked about 3 examples of the young people, but we've got a lot of other groups as well, of all sorts of other people. And I think you need to design the infrastructure to be tailored to their needs. And obviously part of the co-creation process is sort of understanding the individual's needs as well. And so I think even if we've got an idea from the start, you can still keep adapting it. So I think that comes out a little bit from our work that we've done with the group that we've got at the Unicorn Theatre. So, you know, before establishing it, we went into the young people's schools and we asked them to show us around their school from their perspective, and that gave us a real insight into their views of things and allowed the creative professionals at the theatre to start thinking about how are they going to start designing the safe space. And then every week that the young people come, they're still actively thinking about that question, and they're sort of getting feedback on an ongoing basis and sort of moulding the design of each session to just meet those needs that they're getting input on every week. That makes sense.
Thank you, Kate. We have another question. In your experience, what could be the most meaningful forms of acknowledgement of the contribution for end users in the co-creation process? I think you mentioned some forms of acknowledgement, but would you have other examples for us?
I mean, for me, it again depends on who we're talking about. So our young people involved in basically game design, then it'd be much more attractive for them to be acknowledged as part of the making team of the game, like in the sort of credits like you would get at the beginning of a film. That's going to be whereas adolescent co-researchers who are involved in all aspects of the project, giving them the opportunity to potentially towards the end of the project be involved in a publication and be named within that publication, I think is something that would be particularly valuable for them. So it really depends.
So to be actively discussed with the end users themselves. We have a question about diversity, and some of you mentioned diversity already. How do you think we can ensure diversity in co-creation so those we involve represent the perspectives of the end user community, and how do we practically integrate that at the beginning of the project?
I can perhaps talk a bit about it. It is a very important question, because we are saying that it is important to involve citizens, but then we have to recruit and to choose and to create our team. So who are these citizens that are going to work with us? And well, I don't have the answer, but we should ask that ourselves when we are planning the project. This is something that is absolutely key, is that this is a research method, science, citizen science, and involvement of researchers, citizens in research, is a way of, it requires the design of the research protocol. And we should put that on the same page as we do when we are thinking about our sample. And I believe that we are still not there. We still think that, okay, this is something separate, optional, but it is not. So the key is that we think also about the stratification, the profiles, the inclusion and exclusion criteria for the co-researchers, the profiles of the co-researchers that the project needs. And the same as the researchers that are going to be selected for the research project. So also the co-researchers should go in a selection process eventually when they are going to be involved in a day-to-day basis, not one step only involvement. So I think the planning is key prior to the research project starting when we are doing the application.
Can I very briefly add our experience with Manvest? It was really important for us to think about this very thoroughly. So we created standard operating procedures throughout the 11 countries where we worked very seriously into mapping our stakeholders and put a lot of thought into that mapping process in terms of covering or trying to cover all the different characteristics that we wanted to cover in our co-creators. So I think quite a lot of work going throughout those participating countries in the research and having very clear standard operating procedures and how we're doing it rather than just doing it at ad hoc, because it feels like, you know, oh, we're just selecting a co-creator ad hoc. But for us, it's been a very, very clear and very strict process in doing it.
Thank you, Arlinda. Mel, then Claudia, and then we take a final question.
Yeah, thanks. I think there's the diversity issue is fraught with problems in the sense that there are some issues, some diversity categories that tend to rise to the top, and other, it means that sometimes there are people that are unseen. And so this is where I think it's really important to cast a net out in the recruitment strategy really widely and look at the different types of incentives that different people need to get involved and how that sense of community can be fostered across different diverse communities that will make people more likely to want to become involved. But by really, and I agree with Celia, and you know, again about this idea about the planning, this has got to be built in right from the very beginning about how to plan the recruitment strategy as well. So that, you know, you're the places that you're recruiting from, the communities that you're recruiting from will naturally have that diversity within them where they're able to then come forward rather than recruiting for categories themselves in some cases.
Mel, Claudia?
Well, just very briefly to add, I do agree with the proposals and the considerations that have been made, but just say that I think we do need to be very humble. And one question that is important to make is to ask co-creators who is missing, and then really engage in efforts to bring those voices into our discussion tables.
Thanks. Very quickly, one final question about when talking about flexibility in co-creation, how to strike a balance between findings of co-creation when they deviate from the proposed project, and how do we deal with that vis-a-vis ethical review boards and funders. We've seen a little bit already, you know, about negotiating, finding compromises, being transparent about why certain input, how certain input is taken on board or not taken on board. And we also share the message with funders on maybe being calls that make this flexibility easier and possible. Is one of you wanting to add something about it? And then we go into the closing session. Claudia, please.
So that was a left hand, but either way.
Sorry.
So I think we do also need to engage more with ethics committees, not just funding agencies, and that actually will be one of the recommendations. We can always make an addenda to the project that we have received approval on, and making a very good case for why it deviates or why new methods have been used. But from personal experience, these are lengthy projects in the sense that it takes a great deal of time, not just to frame these addendas, but also to receive an answer. And sometimes that's beyond the scope of the timelines, which we have mentioned before, of projects. So I think there should be, and I'm already anticipating a little bit on my recommendation, some reconsideration of how co-creation is done and how it is funded and how it is understood not just by funding agencies, but also by ethical committees.
Thank you, Claudia. Indeed, I would like to invite all panelists to share, if you have one final recommendation that could be addressed, to different stakeholders, scientific community, founders, ethical boards, other groups. Is there some final thoughts you would like to share with us? No, that's all right. I think the discussion was already very, very rich, and I really thank all of the panelists. Mel, I see a hand that came up.
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit late in putting
No
that up.
problem.
Just to say, I think it's really important for researchers to go into co-creation with the mind that they might actually really learn something from their co-creators and not do it for the funding or for, they think they should be doing it, but actually really go in with an open mind and think these people have been living with, the circumstances or whatever it is, and what can you learn from them in that process.
Very good point. And I invite also our participants, if you have recommendations you want to share with us, and maybe we can find a way to bring them forward to the right stakeholders, please share them in Slido. So I thank all of our panelists from the 7 project. I'd like to thank all of the participants for following us throughout the webinar and being so active with comments and questions. I would like to give special thanks to Joyce, who really planned and coordinated all the practical aspects and the logistics of this webinar. So Joyce from the University of Copenhagen, and also Kahula for her support today in managing the chat and the Q&A. And I'd like to close with a nice announcement. These 7 projects are launching a series of joint webinars called Mental Health Dialogues, Boosting Mental Health in Times of Change. So the cooperation among these projects continues. This series will be basically a platform that offers space for researchers, practitioners, policymakers to discuss latest trends, challenges, and advancements in mental health care. So they will feature presentation of recent research findings and actionable recommendations. They will be running starting from September this year and every 4 months. So you can already register, pre-register using the QR code that you are seeing in the slide now. Or also the link that has been put in the chat. So we really encourage you to register for this series, because it's going to be, again, very rich in content and a very good opportunity for learning and sharing. And with the same spirit, I also invite you to go and visit the website of the 7 projects that have been sharing their experience with us today. I believe the links should be in the chat. And with this, thank you again for your participation, and we look forward continuing discussion of co-creation in other arenas. And a final reminder that this webinar is part of the European Mental Health Week. There are many more events and activities taking place. So in case you haven't been checked them yet, you can go to the website of Mental Health Europe to find out more about European Mental Health Week. Thanks, everybody. Have a good end of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye, thanks. Bye.